Welcome to episode 6 of the Training121 PODCAST. Today we're going to be discussing the Underage League of Ireland system and the differences it has with current schoolboy football.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just with last week's podcast, we obviously were discussing our own Premier League predictions for this year coming, and we're going to run a little competition. So we have it started now on our Instagram. So all you need to do to enter, it's very, very simple. Just go to our highlights on Instagram. You'll see it there. It'll just be BPL prediction, and you can just screenshot that and put it on your story. You just do your 1 to 20, and obviously all the rules and all will be explained in that highlight if you're confused with it. So just enter your 1 to 20, and we'll see out of our followers who gets the best prediction, has the least points at the end of the year. You'll understand the rules once you have a quick read about that. Yeah.
Do you want to give a bit of background to the podcast today?
For today's?
Yeah.
So this is obviously a topic people always ask us to kind of talk about.
It's probably the most asked, the most requested.
100% about what we think about just schoolboy football in Ireland in general, and again things to do with the Underage League of Ireland, since it's only really been in a couple of years now. But the main thing we want to talk about today is purely the differences. This isn't going to be us bashing one or the other, or making one seem better than the other. They're clearly different, and both systems suit players depending on where they are in their own development. So for you, it might suit you more to just be in a local schoolboy league, because that again could benefit your development, because your scenario is different to somebody else who, again, we're going to discuss the differences between the National League, where it's a lot more kind of travel and things like that, and how that might actually benefit you as a person. It could help you kind of take more ownership of your own career, things like that. So yeah, it's going to be mainly just the differences, and again,
clear differences.
Clear differences,
micro differences, that, like in anything, but the most blatant and obvious
that we've seen from coaching in it, and like being around players who've been at all the age groups from 13s all the way up to 19s, who tried to push into first teams, and then obviously schoolboy football from our own playing, and obviously from coaching in it as well for a couple of years. So
it's I wouldn't say this is going to be an opinionated debate about one or the other, as you said. I think that's really important that people actually hear that it's going to be based around the differences. So just the clear differences from our own experience from watching games and being involved with players. I think it's kind of like a summary of the main two in that regard. So I think the best way kind of to start this is just to discuss probably one of the main ones that I've seen floating around, parents' issues about the different leagues and stuff like that, and it's just simply the travel. And I think like it's not even just travelling to games. Like, say for example, if you're a Dublin based club and you're playing one of your group games up in the north of Ireland or the south of Ireland, it's travel in regards to contact hours and commitment to sessions and stuff like that. But the one thing with travel is that some people love it and some people don't. So
I think it's, as a youth footballer, I think it could be hugely beneficial. Now I understand, because I'm not a big fan of travelling and stuff. I never really liked the bus journeys and all that type of stuff. It just didn't really suit me, but it is a big part of being a footballer. You do it, you'll probably do it for the rest of your career, especially as you go and play at the higher level. You look at the current League of Ireland, they're travelling all over Ireland to play games. So to learn it at a young age is a good thing, to kind of gain that experience, because it is like, it's a part of what football is. So it's good that you can learn from a young age, whether it's 13s, 15s, 17s, whenever if you take that jump to League of Ireland, if you're hopping at any stage, you're going to be travelling to games regardless. So I think it's more of a beneficial thing, but again, everyone's different. Some people don't enjoy it, like I wouldn't enjoy it, but it's a part of football. So it will help you obviously take more responsibility. Little things like packing your bag and all that type of stuff to get prepared for a long day, a long journey, having your lunch ready, small little things like that, I think it's hugely beneficial. And also seeing different parts of the world of Ireland is quite cool. Being able to travel to away games, say for example to Derry, like that's interesting for a lot of people who wouldn't ever maybe get the chance to travel to places like that. So I think it's good in terms of being like stepping outside of your comfort zone, because it could be quite difficult for a lot of players, and it can be very beneficial either from a young age or not. So it's a huge difference, then rather than in schoolboy football. Now obviously there's some big treks, like you go some DDSL teams, I know you'd be traveling to Arklow, nearly 2 hours is a long journey. It's the same kind of idea, but in terms of the overall package, I'd say in terms of travelling for League of Ireland games, especially from a young age, I think it's quite beneficial.
Big thing with that, I think, when you said about travelling, you said it wouldn't suit you, and I'm kind of the same boat. I wouldn't enjoy long bus journeys or car journeys or whatever it might be, but the idea of just because it's something you don't like doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't do. Like, it's part of, if you want to play at a good level of football, you're going to have to travel a lot. And again, just because you don't like it, don't see that as, well, I don't want to go into the League of Ireland then because of that. Because, for example, if you have to do, for example, today it's terrible weather, if you do a 5k run for your team today, you can't just not do it because you don't like the weather or you don't like running. You've like, sometimes you just got to buckle up and do the things you don't like doing, and there's actually kind of nearly a satisfaction in that kind of idea of doing something that you didn't particularly want to do but still getting it done right. And like you said, it teaches people how to, because you've got to plan your day properly. You've got to, do I bring a pillow, how much food do I bring, what do I eat, because some people, for example, mightn't be great travellers when they eat, things like that. Like, there's so many little things that obviously at 13s, which is the youngest League of Ireland, like they're quite young to learn them lessons. And if they're then in that system from 13 to 19, and let's say they just stop playing football for whatever reason, they've still got 6 years of building these good habits skills. And just life skills in terms of getting themselves ready for things, and that carries straight into your work life, being ready the night before, your bag ready, your work clothes, your lunch, things like that. So
responsibility,
it's big, massive for that.
It's a big factor for it.
So the big difference between the two, schoolboy football and underage National League, will be that schoolboy football is geographically designed to make sure that people are consistently travelling within, let's say, a maximum, let's say 40 kilometres, I'd say.
For the majority.
Like if you're going
there's
from
obviously outliers,
like a North Dublin to a
so
Greystones or something like that. So but like, I think just with one of the big differences with League of Ireland, not every game is a massive travel. A lot of it is centralised, and particularly for 13s and 15s, the initial group stages, I know this year with COVID it's been a little bit hit and miss in regards to the group sizes and stuff like that, but for those younger age players, the groups are defined a lot more narrow in regards to the geographical location, whereas in 17s and 19s it's divided. So you'd have the Northern League or the Southern League, and then there's a bit more travelling involved there. But I think that's a nice little stepstone from 13s, 15s into 17s in regards to travel. So you get like a little snippet of, you might get a Derry away,
one or two big away games,
a Cork away, and then you're still playing your geographical location games. Exactly, there's also, I know you're talking a lot about the benefits there of travelling through National League and going away, and I suppose gaining life skills. There's big benefits to playing localised as well. First of all, it's time. Time is, I think everybody really struggles to understand they only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and if you spend a lot of your time travelling on the weekends, say if you're a Dublin-based team, you're going to the north of Ireland for a game of football, like the game is only 90 minutes, let's say, but you could be arriving to your centre to get the bus at, let's say, 8 a.m, 9 a.m, kick-off is at 2 p.m, you're not going to be home before 6 p.m. or 7. And for a lot of people, particularly if you have a bad day in the office, that can really snowball in effect. So again, as you said at the start, it really depends on character, I think, is one of the big things. But look, it's the same with anything. I think it's just a matter of putting yourself in that environment, and if you like it, brilliant. If you don't like it, but you still want to attain a goal, dig in. It's not for everybody.
It's never the perfect situation. So if you don't like travelling, I don't think you can just rule out football as a career just because of one small little thing like that. I think you just have to find a way to make it work for you. Do something that you enjoy on the bus, or if you're travelling by bus or even by car. Find little things. Watch games, play games, play Game of Among Us with the boys. Good content.
There's big camaraderie in regards, particularly if you get a result.
It's great for building relationships and stuff as well. Big time. Good for team stuff. Although I wasn't a huge fan of that, I just wanted to stay by myself on the bus and just watch something or learn from something. That's how I done it. But a lot of people don't do that. They like the cracking on, which is absolutely fine because it is a good laugh. So there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, there's going to be things that kids especially struggle with at a young age, especially you're 12, 13 years old. It's a difficult thing to do. You're travelling all day, you're gone, you could be gone from your parents, your family all day, although they might travel to game themselves. So it's just little life skills that you pick up. But I think regardless of which way you look at it, it's a good thing that you're able to travel and do new things rather than now obviously staying local is also a very good thing. Time's a hugely important thing. You have to think about other external commitments. Obviously football is good and all, and it's a huge part of a lot of people's lives, but there's other commitments that people need to stick to as well. So time might be a factor, and it depends what age you're at and what step on the ladder you're at as well. So there's loads of different variables to it, but I think we touch on it quite broadly there, but in a good sense. There's a lot of micro details you can go into. But I think overall, I think it's mainly a positive thing to be able to
travel is a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
One thing as well is, I think you mentioned it there, is like the scheduling side of things as well.
Contact
hours. Obviously you have to travel to sessions and stuff. Like a lot of League of Ireland clubs, we train three times a week, sometimes 4 times a week, depending on game days and stuff. So from a young age, that's a big commitment, and it's a huge commitment for parents as well to be able to bring and drop players. So that's another probably a bigger difference. Now a lot of schoolboy clubs train 3 days a week, which is great. The more contact hours, the better. But I think it's more of a generalised thing, and 3-4 times a week in the League of Ireland, that they kind of consistently stay to that if they can. Of course, there's obviously loads of external commitments, but contact hours is a big thing. That might be a big difference.
I think a lot of people don't realise is that, you know, I think with the National League in terms of contact hours, because a lot of it is top down. I know some clubs have different relationships in regards to their senior team and their underage teams, but a lot of it is similar cultures in that regard. So in terms of contact time, like a contact hour might be going to visit and watch a game of your first team. It might be, you know, some interactive stuff on Huddle or even Zoom, for example. And to be fair, I know a lot of schoolboy clubs have invested in that regard in terms of software. But one of the main differences that I found in regards to the differences in coaching at schoolboy and National League level is just the off the pitch commitment in regards to, you know, if there's online stuff that needs to be done. Planning is a bit more meticulous just because of the extra hours that you need to be places. So I wouldn't even say it's contact hours in regards to us and players, or coaches and players, or players and coaches. I think it's contact hours in regards to being involved in the game. Like, it's not just your hour-and-a-half session 3 times a week in a game. A lot of it is off the pitch in regards to stuff online, planning, phone calls. I know a lot of clubs have that as well, but that I found the load to be a bit more different. I'm going to have to say,
yeah. I think as well with scheduling, the idea of in the underage, for example, National League, it's you won't get as many games called off, things like that, just because the groups that you're given all your fixtures and the exact date they'll be on, and that's obviously great for planning, because again, that's what you always want to relate it to, what we're trying to get players to do, which is to hopefully to a top or pro level where, for example, if you're a Premier League footballer, you know every game you're going to play and what date it's going to be on for the whole year. And it's great to have that as coaches as well and as players, just again for preparation reasons, that you can deal with problems more if you know when they're coming almost. And obviously we all played in schoolboy football when we were younger ourselves, so you can go to these places and the game could be called off to the pitch, and it's natural because the facilities are some could be public parks, like where clubs don't necessarily have a lot of control over them, and the pitch could be fine, but the council could just be like, no, you can't play today, and that's not down to anybody's fault. That's just what happens. And there's just little differences like that, because when you bring in like an underage National League that you're trying to link to a senior league, which is like obviously the electricity league, there's automatically going to be more like regulations and kind of, what's the word, like in terms of facilities, not there's like a bare standard of what you need to, pitches and facilities you need to use. Now I'm not saying that they're going to be miles better, because I think anybody who listens to this, anyone who's involved in Irish football, knows the infrastructure isn't fantastic at every level. Like there's obviously benefits and or there's issues at all levels in terms of infrastructure, but the idea that you're trying to build this structure linked to our senior league is that you're almost making a standard that we have to start living up to. And let's say at the minute the underage National League setups are a little bit better in terms of availability of pitches, the idea of games aren't being called off, it's a little bit more scheduled, things like that. That's something that, for example, if I was in a schoolboy club at the minute, I would look at and think to raise our standards to that level to make football better in Ireland. Not saying that, geez, they do that great, like how can I get better at that? And now I'm not saying the League of Ireland is, everybody needs to go and look at that and think, oh, we just need to follow what they're doing all the time because they're doing everything perfect. But you can still take things from it. You can think, well, they're trying to put in a structure that's regulated so that there's no standard drop in terms of facilities when you're going from place X to place Y. So as a schoolboy club, can we then push to that level? I don't know. There's obviously, that's not as simple as just saying that. There's so many problems in terms of facilities now, but you can still strive to have these things so that can you have a facility where games won't be called off because of weather,
that is
obviously in Ireland.
The big difference with scheduling is that games are very rarely called off.
And as a footballer, as any sort of player, you want to be playing every week, and this word development, best way to learn is to play games, and if your games are being called off every second week, become very frustrating. You're not getting as many hours on the pitch, which is very frustrating. It's also stop and start, especially now with COVID. You see how frustrating it is to have that year round as well. Very, very frustrating when things get back to normal. If it's kind of that stop and start, so a consistent kind of like you were saying there, to have reliable facilities and all that type of stuff. I think it's getting there. It's steady progress. I think a lot of people hone in on the negatives too much. Ireland, it's in a good place at the moment. It's getting better, certainly. I think across the board. And there's now kind of a, like we said already, like a clear pathway now that you have your electricity league that's actually doing very well now. It's growing. There's a lot of good players now coming back to the league, being developed from your 19s or 17s. They're stepping up and doing well. I think that's for the first time in a couple of years that pathway is now clear. That it's starting at 13s. Obviously, it's very young. There's the 15s, 17s, 19s, and then goes straight to the first team. But for once, I think it has a spine going towards. I think it's been called upon for years. A lot of people have given out that there's no clear pathway at all in Irish football. I think for the first time there is, and I think that's a good thing. Now it's still at the, early doors. It's in its second phase of 13s.
Well, if you're talking full spine from 13s up, it's in its second year. 17 started when you were 17.
Yeah, so it seems like a long time ago.
No, it does.
But even with that, still new. It's still fresh. There's so much time. It's not perfect at the moment. Nothing's perfect at the moment. You look at the Premier League, new adaptations, new rules, VAR. It took a full year. Even now, it's still not perfect. Things take time. It's going to take a long time for it to be perfect, but it's in a good situation at the moment. There is a pathway you can clearly see. Obviously, it's every second year, which is difficult for now, but it's only at the start. I think it just needs lots more time, and it will just keep getting better and better.
Yep, I'd agree.
I think the idea of the structure from whatever age, you can agree that 13s is too young or not, that's again, I think that's down, everyone's going to have different opinions on that, nice. But from whatever age you want to start this a national league, the key word is national league. You have to have a system from whatever age you want to start at straight to first team football in your country, if we want to get better as a country. So for example, we watch Ireland play, and again, people over the last couple of years, it's been hit and miss at times, and some people agree, some people disagree over things that have been going on in Ireland purely from the national team point of view. But name a country that has a strong national league team that doesn't have a relatively strong domestic league. There's very, very few outliers, and I think we have to, if we want to make our national team better and get our standard football better, is a line between our senior domestic league, which is obviously the electricity league, right the way down. It just has to happen. For me anyway, I don't see any other way how it's going to work.
I think in a couple of years you'll have a 13s, you'll have a 14s, you'll have a 15s, you'll have a 16s, and it'll be even clearer. Now that's going to take time. It can't just happen like that. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And also that doesn't just nullify schoolboy football at all. Schoolboy football is heavily involved in that. It's just when you have a top division in their country, which for us is the electricity league. You have your Premier Division and your First Division. It's great that they have two as well. So you have to be fair, the standard in both is quite good. But now there's no point in having that and then nothing from the bottom up. You can't just jump from one to the other. There has to be an alignment at least. And the beauty about it, hopefully in a couple of years when they have representative teams in each age group, because at the moment 13s to 15s is a big jump, 15s to 17s is a big jump, and then 17s to 19s you kind of even out physically and maturity and all that type of stuff. But I think if you have one at 13s, even if it starts at 12s and it just keeps going up, then you're just going to have so much exposure to what we would hope would be this standard that you're talking about, which is trying to reach that top division. So that clear pathway I think is fundamentally important to any sort of international success. Like you're saying, you're looking at the Irish national team, at the moment you have probably for the first time in a while like Jack Byrne now breaking in, which is great, but it needs whole structure to get to that stage.
The Irish national team won't get better if the league doesn't get better. I think it's at its peak now for what it is. If the league doesn't get better, the national team will kind of stay and maybe
every so often you get an outlier, a really good player that comes out. they might get an early move and they're playing schoolboy football, go to England and they come back or whatever it might be. But to have a consistent is the one, to be consistently competing at a good international level, and we're still actually at a good level. Hopefully Slovakia, there's a good result next week, but the little detail, or is that this week?
I think it's next weekend. Yeah.
Next week. Oh yeah. It's still Sunday.
Do forget about that.
Monday. Yeah. But to have that consistent, I think to rely on your domestic league, and I think relying is not a bad word to use. If you can rely on producing your own talent rather than looking outside, produce your own talent. Obviously, it's not going to be the perfect situation. It's going to take years and years and years. But like everything, it takes time. But I think at the moment there's good plans in place throughout the whole country, not just National League, but schoolboys getting better, everything's getting better. So I think as overall as a country, it's getting slowly, it's going to get there. It's going to take a while, but I think over time it will get to a very, very good level. I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah, the top-down structure is nice for players to come in and see that, but I think in regards to schoolboy football particularly, I think it's a lot more difficult to classify schoolboy clubs as like there's a certain crop that are, you know, top grade, let's say, in regards to attracting the best players and stuff like that. I suppose like off the top of your head you could name a couple of clubs, particularly in the Dublin region, Cork region, Midlands as well. But one thing that those schoolboy clubs have over the current National League teams is, I would say, a promotion culture in regards to getting players across the water. Compared to current National League. Like I think the schoolboy clubs have not an advantage per se, but to play for a club that has current international players in the Irish first team, you can take a lot of pride as a player in those squads. I think that's a massive difference as well currently with the current National League system, and obviously the schoolboy system is that like if you're going into a club that has Irish internationals playing week in week out in the Premier League who have represented your same badge, you know, that's a huge benefit to players in those clubs, and it really brings in a nice culture in that regard. I'd say that's a big difference now at the minute.
Again, it's still kind of new, the whole system, so it's going to take a while for things to slowly develop and unfold. There's going to be lots and lots of ups and downs. If you're looking at the youngest age we've had from a National League 13s last year, it's only in its second year now, it's not even done, so it needs so much more time, but it's just steady progress. I think it's a good thing. It just needs time, loads of time just to steadily get to it. But I think overall as a footballing nation, I think overall it is getting slightly better, and but it will take so much more time and everyone just hopefully stay on the same page and just keep slowly going towards a more positive future for Irish football. Well, one thing actually, we're talking about the pathway, one little disadvantage I suppose you could call it is the big gap from 19s to first team. Would you agree? Yeah, it's difficult because you look at England, for example, we just got the Premier League, they have the Premier League 2, they have the 23s league, and now the majority of players in there aren't 21, 22. If you're not made it by then, they've moved on, they've maybe dropped the leagues or just decided to move country, but it still has that platform. It's very difficult to go from an 18-year-old or 19-year-old at 19s straight into a first team. Now, players can do it. Players do it from 17s to first team. It's possible, but that little gap in between is maybe where you lose a lot of really, really good players who just might not just be there maturity-wise or physically-wise just yet. I think you might lose a couple of players there. We know a couple who have like just that little. They might need an extra year or so.
Yeah. There's not a lot of clubs to like drop down a level two. Like you said in England, if you're like 21 and you're in like United's academy or whatever, there's a lot of leagues you can drop down and still be a pro footballer, semi-pro footballer. There's like 10 to 12 leagues that are like pro and semi-pro. So,
and even in the same regional area.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in Ireland you've got 2 leagues that you can jump between, like, and then after that you're in intermediate, like amateur football in Munster or Leinster Senior League or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's a big issue that needs to be addressed. The idea of like a link league, and you could do ways where you loan players to like Leinster Senior League teams. You could again try set up like a reserve kind of league, which could mix Leinster Senior League teams and like second teams, like the Rover second team, but for obviously more of the if every League of Ireland club had a second team, and then you had nearly a third division as well. But again, these things take money and time to develop. But that's a big issue.
I don't know. I think in the same breath, like I wouldn't say that that's a difference between schoolboy and and national leagues. I think schoolboy football dropout rates from 16 onwards is huge currently at the minute. And like in regards to schoolboy football, I think what that hones in is that your pinnacle is playing top amateur football. Whereas like that's the end goal. Now, to be fair to the amateur teams and the school, like amateur senior teams that are connected with schoolboy clubs, clubs obviously have full structure. They have a pathway as well. Unfortunately, for players that want to play professionally or at a higher level than that, that might not be the route. I think the biggest argument is currently is that there has been success at the junior, the schoolboy level of getting players to play professionally. I think that's the argument in case, really. But that gap between 19s and first team is not just evident in the National League, it's also evident at amateur too. Because dropout rates are different. You know, I know at schoolboy level the dropout rates are mostly because of external factors, whereas players that are playing National League at 19s generally, I'm saying generally, have different ambitions in regards to the sport. So the dropouts are for different reasons. I think in terms of facilitation of keeping players in that loop of a quote unquote professional environment, then that's needed at National League level. But I do think schoolboy football as well needs to put more of an emphasis on not there, like I know a lot of clubs put a lot of focus on the amateur first team. So like say if you're playing Saturday intermediate in Munster or Leinster or wherever, and facilitate in lower leagues within senior football.
I think that's something, that's a good point. I think a lot of clubs actually are starting to do that. Is players or teams that they have in kind of 18s and 19s, a lot of them are going into the lower divisions but in senior football, which is good because it gives them time to hopefully step up to the top if they have a top side for their senior side. So seniors like grade by first team, second team, third team. If you have two or three, the third one or the second one possibly being for your younger players, I think that's good. And schoolboy football, that should be if that's your jump, that's great, because playing senior football at any level is underrated. That level it's huge.
Yeah, but like that amateur senior level, I think schoolboy clubs sometimes pass the buck in regards to let's say the National League don't have this facility for 19s players. Well, my argument in case would be, where is your setup in terms of schoolboy football? Like even if you take Danny Grant for example, or Dan O'Kelly, like from coming from or from Leicester Senior League backgrounds. Like if those clubs, I know like the clubs they came from would be let's say highly regarded in regards to clubs competing in schoolboy football, but that would be, in my opinion, the perfect way. Well, obviously nothing's perfect, but the most ideal way in regards to, can you have a facilitation squad where players don't want to do the travel but want to play at a high level in and around first teams at 17. I think that's huge,
because you lose a lot of players. You lose a lot of really good players. Like
the responsibility is on both organisations. I'm not going to call the schoolboy football an organisation, but I think it's the burden of, I'd say, responsibility lies on both to facilitate.
We do.
In the country.
We do. That's actually a great point you made there about the dropout rates are probably similar, and obviously for different reasons depending on.
Absolutely.
Like for example, it could be a National League player who just can't get a jump into a first team setup, but they really want to play at that level, or it could be again a schoolboy club. If someone coming into sixth year might just think, I'm going to leave football for the year, whatever, and that's fair enough. Different reasons, but you made a good point there, and we do forget sometimes like the objective of a coach and a sport is to get people to move regularly. Like that's all a sport is. Like that's like just get people to be healthy. So your job as a coach is to, depending on if it's a younger kid, is to like build a love for the game so that there's retention and they stay in it. And again, you made a good point there on it's down to both stakeholders, so the National League and the schoolboy leagues, to retain as many people playing football as they can. So again, because that's again the goal of sport, and as a coach, I would love if every player I coach stay playing football until they're in their 30s or whatever, because that's again the whole point of sport. Like that's why we play, you know, to move. Like you do, and you kind of have to reel yourself back to think about that, because that's the whole reason it was invented. Like
I find both like I know National League is in, like, for what the business that they're in regards to making this a more competitive environment at the international level, I think they need to be a bit more cutthroat in regards to developing football players, and I think there is a place for that. There has to be a place for that, but they also, and both schoolboy clubs as well. They have a place in regards to making sure that the outliers who might not be at that level yet still have places to compete, and the players who just want to play the game for the simple sake of competing,
for fun,
playing with their mates,
doing what you want
whatever it
to
is.
do, and
Like, I think the big question is who knows? Like, who knows what? Like, at the end of the day, players and people are just bundles of potential, and I don't think you can write off anybody in regards to what they're going to achieve in the game.
Yeah.
You know, what somebody looks like at 12 years of age is going to be completely different to what they look like at 19.
Not
So
even close.
I think both stakeholders need to pay close attention to what their setup is.
And know what you are, know what you need to do.
Yeah, 100%. I'd say in terms of differences as well, like, I wouldn't talk too much about levels. I've seen some excellent schoolboy teams at 13s that would easily compete in National League 13s. I don't think there's a massive standard gap in regards to that. But I do think one difference is that spine of seeing a vision for once now in regards to getting to the professional game. I'm not talking like schoolboy clubs do have facilitation programs from 13s, 14s on the way up to senior teams. I'm talking for young boys or girls that want to play professionally. They now have a channel in which they can work to.
Yeah. You look at England, like all the academies and stuff, they're not there.
Yeah, like
They're not there to just make up numbers. They're there to become professional footballers.
The argument there for schoolboy teams is that they've produced professional footballers, but let's be real here. The Premier League standard has significantly became a powerhouse in world football
now, which is
it
not a problem. It's a great thing. Don't get me wrong. The standard's getting better. Yeah.
It's not easy to compete. Like, it was difficult beforehand. It is extremely difficult now. So, in my opinion, what can we do? It's to gather together internally and create our own professional league with structures and systems which looks after every stakeholder.
100%. It gets better. We used to get better.
Like,
I get lost behind.
That's the big, in my opinion, that's the biggest difference. There's a clear vision. Now, as you said, there's gaps. 13s, 15s. There is huge debate in regards to scrapping a National League 13s and putting in your facilitation, let's say third tier. Let's say, in my opinion, there is a place for a National League 13s.
Absolutely.
You know, I think there's a place for all age groups in that regard. We'll see, but there is a structure.
Yeah, an interesting difference I've noticed as well since, for example, the National League, the 17s was when you were 17. Was it? What's that? 4 years ago. Would have been about.
Wait a minute.
You're 21, aren't you? So 4.
Yeah, roughly
4 years ago. Is that it's almost. And this kind of ties into the social media we talk about with all the like League of Ireland pages that are kind of promoting the league naturally, and it's almost like it's built a bit of a fire in the country for people actually following League of Ireland clubs. Like, even myself from working in the National League as well, is that I've noticed I care more about it, or I'm more interested about it. Yeah, and that's great. Like, if that's done that to us, it's done that to multiple people. So it's trying to build a football culture in the country, obviously, which is important. So, and again, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a difference between the two. It's just added something different, I think, which is fine. Like, if there was only schoolboy football, it can get stagnant because there's no challenge. Whereas now, if you're in schoolboy football, you should see this as a challenge, not to berate and say it's got this X, Y, and Z wrong with it, but to look at what it does well and take from it, and what it doesn't do well, can you accommodate for that? Like, and that's so, like you said, if there's gap years in between the National League, like the 13s, 15s, like there's no 14s or 16s, as a schoolboy club, can you then accommodate for that gap? And that's your like niche nearly.
It's like everyone going towards the same direction. We all want a better national team. We all want to have a better footballing nation. Everyone should be singing off the same hymn sheet. You know? Everyone wants to be doing the same thing.
I think the biggest issue when it was first introduced, and especially when they brought out the 13s and 15s, is it was kind of pushed as a like you versus us.
There's no
kind of
competition. There's no same, like, we're on the same path here. We all want to do better things for the kids. Like,
it wasn't sold particularly well, and then people naturally when it's something this gets brought in and everyone's like, well, it seems like what's happened is they've come in and went, yous are all doing it wrong, we're going to fix it and put these two leagues in to make it better, whereas it shouldn't have been done like that. It needs to be cohesive, because we all want to make kids better at football if we're coaches, and to watch a better national team and to watch a better league, so that, like, imagine being able to every week just go watch a really, really good professional league in your country and not having to go fly to England every week if you want to watch. Like, we need to have that here, and the way they sold it originally was kind of like a you versus. They created a you versus us mentality, which is just a terrible idea in my opinion. It should have been more cohesive, maybe inclusive. I don't know the best ways that could have been done, but to me it just seemed like it was like we're coming in and then banding around the word elite and things like that. It just doesn't work at that point, especially with the 13s and 15s. I thought they could have dealt with that a bit better, but again, we're kind of still, naturally, because we're talking about the differences, we're kind of talking about the positives and negatives about, which is, I think, is fine. But yeah, that's another thing. I felt it could have been introduced a lot smoother, maybe would be the word.
I think for the first time, I was just thinking that when you were speaking of when I was a kid, and I remember like being in around like the NDSL Academy and stuff, and Sporting Fingal were a thing at the time, and I hadn't a clue. I hadn't a clue what league they were playing in. I hadn't a clue what was going on, to be honest with you. Didn't know there was a League of Ireland. And up until I was like 16, 17, still hadn't really a clue. Now this is only a couple of years ago. And now all of a sudden, I actively am checking results. I know the majority of the players in the league. I know exactly what's happening. And for now, once as a kid, they are seeing all this on Instagram. They're seeing it on telly for the first time, which is super. Like 11 and 12 year olds are watching clubs. They're supporting clubs. They're hopefully when COVID goes, they're going to games. And now they're going, and not just flying to England to watch Manchester United play, Liverpool play. They're going to their local club and going, I could play there one day. And now with that spine, with that alignment in the country, you can get that, and I think that's a really good thing. And then with that, it just builds more dedication, more drive. Everyone wants to do the one thing. Now you have it in your country. It could be your next, like in Tallaght, you've Tallaght Stadium there. That's one of the top teams in the country. And now you look at Dundalk, they're playing Arsenal in a couple of weeks. Like what? Like, you have something there to aspire to. While a couple of years ago, I didn't think you have that. Now, obviously, there's been some top teams down the years we wouldn't know so much about because it was back in the day. Culture. Great.
Yeah,
there was no culture. It was like a gap for a while, and now it's back. And I think people need to accept it and go with it. It's a really positive thing, and just everyone aligned, get everyone aligned in the country to work towards a positive footballing nation. I think because there's great potential here. You look at the young players that are currently in the international.
Yeah, you were at a game yesterday. Many games over the weeks.
Unbelievable. Like the standard is in a really good situation at the moment. It just needs to be nurtured in the correct way, where everyone's on the same hymn sheet and everyone wants the positive things out of it. Like you were saying, it was introduced in a bad way, but give it time. Forget about all these you versus us. It shouldn't be that. It should be everyone together looking to pull in the same direction. I think that's the most important thing. To overall just get a good footballing nation.
Is there any other real differences?
Probably micro differences, but it's hard to get like real standouts.
There's differences in everything. There's a difference between, you know, the two glasses in front of us, for example. Like, there's differences in everything. I think if you pick nit holes all the time, people go in circles. I think the whole objective of this podcast was kind of just to give like a little bit of our own opinions in regards to, we've been in both situations, and they're the main, I would say, non-opinionated differences for people, because people are genuinely interested and they ask us regularly what are the main differences between schoolboy football and National League. And I think the problem is currently with social media, it gives people a platform anonymously, and also they can also show who they're representing, their names and stuff, but a lot of it becomes, as you said, this you versus them mentality where there's nothing constructive. Nobody talks about the benefits and the drawbacks at all on any platform, and I think this could be a platform here that shows that both are extremely necessary. One won't work without the other. It's as simple as that. And like, both are so necessary and vital. Both have great people in it, and I think it's a matter of people and cohesion. It's not you versus us. You know, I think if people have that attitude and they feel, you know, strong resentment between one and the other, I think it's time you get your priorities in check. And I've had that conversation with myself as well.
Cohesion.
You know, at the end of the day, look yourself in the mirror, and then that's the only thing you can control.
I have a new social media rule, by the way.
Heavy.
So, you are not allowed to criticise something if you're doing it from an anonymous profile and your name is not attached to it.
When have you ever done that?
No, I'm not saying I'm just saying it's a new a new social media rule in general. Like,
you shouldn't be
if you're not going to put your name beside what you're saying in public, then you shouldn't be saying it. 'Cause what are you achieving? I get to say this, nobody knows I said it. Great. Like, if you're going to say something, put your name beside it, so at least
then it's just a one-way conversation. If you're going to be voicing an opinion, have a discussion.
You're not putting nothing on the line. I think that's the issue. You're not putting nothing out there to be challenged. You just want to say this thing.
Say it and then
like,
leave.
Put your name beside it. Like, if you're going to say it.
Like that's what I'm saying. I think
Big pet peeve.
but I think that's one of the main things you said today in regards to differences is that I think the whole, particularly the 13s and 15s, was introduced with an idea of a you versus them mentality. So National League versus schoolboy football. And I know geographically, like Dublin has had different problems to what's happening in Cork or Galway and Wexford, for example. I know there's a couple of like different discrepancies, let's say, in regards to players and coaches and stuff like that. But like, there's a lot of good places on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook of discussions, and I find people are just wasting their time because they are in this culture of you versus them, and it isn't that. Like,
Step back.
put the kids first in that regard. Like, obviously we're going to make mistakes along the way, and people are highly emotional, and sport is huge here, so you know there's going to be mistakes, but
that's it, yeah. The big one with the 13s and the 15s as well is like the mistakes being made in National League are being made at schoolboy level, and vice versa. The mistakes that schoolboy like clubs are doing, National League clubs are doing at the younger age, like there's not that much difference between a 13s National League and a 13s schoolboy team. Like it's just a name difference essentially, and again, there's obviously going to be some things that are better in either
because kids are kids.
Category. Like it doesn't really matter. That's the idea. The idea it's things like that where it was thrown in a bit too much, like it's as if the 13s National League is like the be all and end all of football.
Yeah,
it's just it's not different.
It's not the kids that are the problem. It's a lot of the higher authority. Parents have issues and stuff, like you're saying, voicing opinions and stuff. A lot of it can be constructive, which is great. It starts sparking conversations, but there's a lot of negativity that comes from the wrong people as well. Sometimes you need those fundamental people to rely on that are trying to spread positive messages. I think there's just so much negativity spread around at the moment, and it's going nowhere. It's just a circle of it's a vicious circle. It's like you versus us, and it just doesn't stop.
It's like
take a step back, see what's best for the country in terms of footballing, and what's best for the kids developing, whether it's in schoolboy, whether it's in league battle, it doesn't matter. Everyone should be on the same hymn sheet. We're all trying to go in the same direction and improve in a positive manner, rather than just going in circle and circle. You see it all the time, and it's a real issue. But anyways, it is what it is. It needs time. It needs time. Both do.
Is that a wrap up?
Yeah, both need time.
Yeah.
And let's be positive. Woo!
Woo! Right, do you want to outro?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think it's important we always say thank you at the end of every single show that we do, because at the end of the day, without listeners, we don't have these discussions. In my opinion, I'm a better person than a coach after this conversation, just as the lads are as well. So we want to thank you for always tuning in, giving constructive feedback, and that we always take on board to try to make at least some more value to this podcast. So continue to like and share our content, if it's on TikTok or Instagram, Facebook or YouTube.
LinkedIn now.
Oh yeah,
LinkedIn, get on it. If you're on LinkedIn, we'd really appreciate the support.
Yeah, always growing, always trying to hit new people with some ideas and some areas to learn. So a big thank you, and enjoy your week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.